The laughter around the marble table was cruel, echoing off the mansion walls. Mr. Halstead, a millionaire known for his arrogance, pointed toward the maid standing nervously by the door. "Bring your son in," he said with a mocking grin. "Let us see if the helps boy can play a man's game." The guests laughed. To them, it was a joke, a moment of amusement before dessert. But when 11-year-old Elijah stepped inside, the room changed. He was small, quiet, his eyes deep with intelligence far beyond his age. He sat across from the man who owned the mansion, the city, and perhaps even his mother's dignity. Mr. Halstead smirked. "Do you even know how the pieces move, boy?" Elijah looked down at the chessboard, then up at the man towering over him. "Yes, sir," he said softly. "But I do not think you do." The laughter stopped. The first move was made, and what began as a joke was about to rewrite everyone's idea of genius. Elijah's world was small but full of quiet purpose. Each morning he watched his mother, Ruth, polish the marble floors of the Halstead mansion while he sat near the kitchen window, studying an old chessboard with faded squares. The clink of dishes, the hum of the vacuum, and the distant chatter of the wealthy filled the air like background music he had learned to ignore. His mother often reminded him, "Stay humble, but never small." Those words stayed with him longer than breakfast. The mansion smelled of lemon polish and old money. Chandeliers glowed softly over portraits of ancestors who had never known a hard day's work. Ruth moved like a shadow, graceful and unnoticed, until a sharp voice called from the dining room. "Elijah," she whispered, her hands trembling slightly. "Stay here. Do not speak unless spoken to." Mr. Halstead's guests had gathered again, laughter too loud, too polished. One of them had spotted the boy near the doorway and joked, "Does he play chess too?" "Perhaps he learned it while polishing silver," Halstead chuckled. "Maybe he should show us his skills." "What do you say, Ruth? Let the boy entertain us?" Ruth's eyes filled with dread. Elijah looked at her, then at the golden chess set gleaming on the table. He could smell the roasted coffee, feel the weight of their mockery pressing against his chest. He stepped forward anyway, small and steady. The laughter dimmed. A quiet challenge had just been placed on the board. The room smelled faintly of cigars and cologne, thick with wealth and arrogance. Elijah sat across from the millionaire, his small hands folded neatly on the edge of the chessboard. The golden pieces gleamed under the chandelier, reflecting on his calm eyes. Mr. Halstead made the first move, smirking. "Let us see what you can do, little man." Elijah studied the board in silence. He remembered his mother's soft voice the night before. "Respect does not come from money, Eli. It comes from knowing who you are." With that memory, he moved his pawn forward, quiet, steady, fearless. At first, the men around the table laughed. "He is just moving at random," one said. But after 3 moves, their laughter slowed. After 6, their smiles vanished. Elijah's eyes tracked every piece like a hunter watching prey. Then came hope. He trapped a knight, then a bishop. Even Halstead leaned forward now, the smugness slipping from his face. "Who taught you this?" he asked. "My mother," Elijah replied softly. "She says every move tells a story." The guests exchanged glances. The room grew still. A clock ticked in the background, loud and rhythmic. The boys' confidence filled the silence they once owned. Then came pain. Halstead, embarrassed, knocked a piece off the board. "You got lucky," he muttered. The guests laughed again, forced, uneasy. Elijah's hands trembled slightly. He looked at his mother standing by the doorway, her face pale but proud. For a moment he wanted to stop, to shrink back. But he heard her voice again in his mind. "You were born to think, not to bow." He took a deep breath and made his next move. Check. A hush fell. Every eye fixed on the small boy who had just cornered a millionaire on his own board. If you were there, would you have spoken up or stayed silent? Halstead stared at the board, his confidence shattered. "You cannot be serious," he whispered. Elijah looked at him calmly, his voice soft but unshaken. "It is not luck, sir. It is strategy." The chandelier light flickered slightly as the final move hovered between them. one that would change the balance of pride and power forever. The golden chessboard gleamed under the chandelier as silence settled over the room. Every guest leaned in. Elijah's next move would decide everything: pride, respect, even his mother's dignity. Mr. Halstead's hands trembled as he moved his queen. "You have no way out," he said with forced confidence. Elijah studied the board, calm and focused. His small fingers hovered over the rook, then shifted to the bishop. The world around him faded. All he could hear was the faint ticking of the clock and his mother's heartbeat echoing in his memory. With one final, "Deliberate move," he whispered. "Checkmate." The word hung in the air like thunder after lightning. The room froze. Mr. Halstead stared at the board, his king trapped, his pride shattered. The laughter that once filled the mansion vanished completely. Ruth exhaled, tears welling in her eyes. The boy she had once told to stay humble but never small had just done the impossible. Elijah looked up at the man across the table. "Thank you for the game, sir," he said softly. "It was an honor." There was no arrogance in his tone, only quiet strength. Halstead's jaw tightened, then slowly relaxed. "You are remarkable," he murmured. For the first time, the millionaire's voice carried respect. "Share this if you still believe kindness can change the world." As Elijah stood, the golden pieces gleamed like small victories under the light. The board had been conquered, not by power, but by patience. The game was over, but the lesson had just begun. The mansion, once filled with cold laughter, now felt different, quieter, humbled. The golden chessboard still sat between them, pieces frozen mid-victory. Mr. Halstead rose slowly from his chair, his pride dimmed but his humanity beginning to surface. He looked at Elijah, not as a servant's son, but as something far greater. "Your mind," he said softly, "is worth more than every trophy in this house." Ruth stood at the doorway, her hands trembling around her cleaning cloth. For years she had polished this man's floors, invisible to his eyes. Now he bowed his head slightly in respect to her son. Elijah smiled faintly, tracing the edge of a pawn with his finger. "My mother says every move tells a story," he whispered. Halstead nodded. "And today, you changed mine." Outside, the evening light spilled through the tall windows, glinting off the chessboard like gold and forgiveness. Ruth took Elijah's hand, leading him toward the door. The sound of their footsteps echoed softly. The same rhythm that once belonged only to servants now carried the weight of victory. Before leaving, Elijah turned back. "Sir," he said gently, "next time we play, maybe we both win." Halstead smiled, not with arrogance but with gratitude. "Yes, Elijah," he replied. "Next time." The camera lingers on the chessboard. A king bowed before a boy's quiet genius. Subscribe for more stories where silence turns into strength. Because sometimes, the smallest move changes the biggest game, and sometimes the quietest mind teaches the loudest lesson. If you were in Elijah's place, would you have played the game?